Hi lovelies, let's make this gown with ruched sleeve and gathered back waistline. So I've marked my body measurement. I came down by 1.5 inches to get my shoulder line, and then from my shoulder line I came down to my under bust line. From my shoulder line I came down to my waist line. Now from my waistline I'm going to come down by 1.5 inches to get the down waistline. So now this down waistline is optional because you can still connect your basque from the waistline. From my down waistline, I came down by 3 inches. You can come down by 4 or 5 inches, depending on how basque you want the waistline to be. The next thing I'll do is to take my shoulder measurement of 8 inches on my shoulder line, and then I took the sleeve length. So for this tutorial, you're going to need like a longer sleeve length. So I'm making use of 12. If you want this small ruched, you can make use of 15. Okay, now I'll go ahead and take my neck wideness of 3 inches. So from this my shoulder point on the shoulder line, I'll come down by half of an inch, and then on the sleeve length point I'm going to come down by 1 inch. So I'll go ahead and connect the points together like so for my shoulder slope. So after I'm done doing this, the next thing is to take my sleeve roundness. Okay, how wide I want the sleeve to be. So I'm making use of 9 inches because I don't want this to be too big. Please, if you want this to be too big, make use of 10, 11 inches. Okay, now I'll go ahead and connect the point like so, and then from this point here I will go in by 4 inches, and then I will connect it to that 4 inches point like so, and also connect it from this point to the under bust line like this. Now the next thing I will do is from this point I will come out by 1 inch, and then I will reconnect the side, that is the armhole area, like so. Now after doing that, the next thing I will do is to take my under bust measurement divided by 4. I have 8.5 inches. I'll mark the point there. Then my waist circumference divided by 4, I have 9 inches. I'll mark the point there. I'll add half inch to the 9 inches I marked on my waistline, making 9.5 inches that I'm going to add on my down waistline, and then I'll go ahead to connect the point like so. Now after doing that, I'll just go ahead to connect this from the down waistline to the basque line on the center front. So I'll add 1 inch as the allowance and then connect the point together. After doing that, I'll go ahead to cut out this front basque waist. So after I'm done cutting this, I'm going to label this my front, and then I'm going to be using this to cut out the back pattern later. So for the top part of this dress, I'll come down by 9 inches for the back neck depth, because I'm using this to cut both the front pattern and the back pattern on my fabric. Okay, now go ahead to connect the back neck depth. So I'm just indicating this, that this line is for my back neck depth. Now I'm going to be connecting this to, for the front neck depth, I'm going to connect from my neck wideness to my under bust line like so. So this is for my front neck depth. Okay, now I'll go ahead to add 1 inch from my shoulder line like so. Now this 1 inch is for the ruched effect. Okay, it's for the ruched part where I'm going to place my rope. Okay, now I'll go ahead and connect the point like so. After doing this, I'll go ahead to cut out this pattern. So I'm going to cut out the back neck depth first because I'm using this to cut on my fabric. Okay, after cutting on my fabric, I'll go ahead to cut out the front neck depth. Okay, and this is all for this top part. I'm just going to cut out this excess hair on the shoulder. So now to cut the back basque area, I went ahead to bring my plain pattern paper. So I'm going to minus 1.5 inches first for my zipper allowance, like so, and I'll go ahead to rule a straight line across. So I'm using this line that I labeled my back line as a guideline for the top. Okay, now I'll go ahead and label this part my zipper allowance, and then I'll place my front basque area like so from the zipper allowance line, and then I'll go ahead to trace the shape out like so. So after I'm done doing this, the next thing I will do is to trace out the waist line on the back pattern for the side and the zipper allowance side as well. I'll go ahead now and connect the points together like so. Then I'll also outline this first line I have here. So after I'm done cutting this, I'll label this line here my waistline. Then from the zipper area below my waistline, I'll come down by 1 inch, and then I'm going to connect it to the waistline on the side. Now this is to avoid any zipper bulginess, okay? So I'm going to cut through my waistline like so to close it up. So after I'm done doing that, from the zipper allowance area from the waistline, I'll go in by 1/2 inch. This is also to remove any form of zipper bulginess. I'll go ahead and connect it like this. So I'm just going to cut this out. Now this is all for the back basque waist and also for the front basque waist, okay? Now if you notice the two sides, they are aligning properly. It's just that the center front and the center back, because of the zipper bulginess that we took out, okay? So this is all for the top part of this dress. Remember, I'm using this upper part to cut the back piece on my fabric first before cutting the front of it, okay? And then for the back basque, I'm going to cut times 2 of it. Then for the front backs, I'm going to cut it on fold. Okay, so I'll head over to start cutting them on my fabric. Now I placed this on my fabric after I folded my fabric by 2. I placed this pattern paper on my fabric. So I'm cutting out the back of this dress first, okay? So at this upper part here, I did not add stitching allowance, while on the back neckline I added 1/2 inch stitching allowance. Then for the sleeve area, I added 1 inch stitching allowance, that is for the folding. Then for the side, I added 1 inch stitching allowance. So for the down part here, which is the under bust line, I'm going to add 1/2 inch stitching allowance. So after I'm done cutting this back pattern, I will go ahead to cut out the front neckline now, to cut out the front piece, okay? So this is me cutting out the front neckline, okay? Now I'll go ahead and fold my fabric by 2 as well to cut the front piece out. So the same way I cut out on the back pattern, at this shoulder line I did not add stitching allowance, but at the front neckline I added 1/2 inch stitching allowance. For the sleeve part, I added 1 inch folding allowance for the sleeve. Then for the side, I added 1 inch stitching allowance. Then for the waistline, I added 1/2 inch stitching allowance. Okay, so I'll go ahead now to keep this aside, and this is it for the front and also for the back. Now the next thing is to cut out the basque area of this dress. Now I'm going to be making use of the fabric as the lining as well, so I went ahead to cut this into 4 places, leaving 1/2 inch stitching allowance all around apart from the side, because I later went ahead to cut out the 1/2 inch stitching allowance I left at the side. Okay, now I have 4 pieces of this. I'm using 2 inches for the lining, 2 inches for the main front. Okay, now for the front basque waist, I went ahead to cut this on fold, and I cut out 2 pieces of it. So if you're making use of lining for this part, please go ahead and cut 1 piece of this unfold for the front pattern. Then you can cut your lining for it. So for the back piece, I've cut out what I'll use to turn the neckline. As you can see, I have 2 pieces here, and I also notch the 1 inch point I'll use to fold the sleeve. Okay, now I'll go ahead and open this up like so. Then I'll start sewing. Now for this, what I'm going to use to turn the back neckline, I'll just fold this part like so. I'll repeat the same thing for the other one. Now after doing that, I'm going to place this right side facing the right side like this. I'll go ahead to sew this down with 1/2 inch. Now after sewing with 1/2 inch, I'll go ahead to notch this, and then I'm going to be top stitching on it like so. So whatever I did here, I'm going to repeat on the other one as well. So after I was done top stitching, I'm just going to fold this to the back like so. Now I don't have light, but I'm going to use my hemming tape to do this later on. I'll place this underneath it like so, and then I'll iron this out. But for now, I'll continue this tutorial. Now I'll go ahead to place this like so. I'm going to stitch the upper part and I will stitch the down part. Then I will run a loose stitch for the gathers on the under bust line. Now after I was done doing that, as you can see, I went ahead to run a loose stitch like I said earlier on. So I'm going to like gather this up a little bit. So I will go ahead to start sewing the front piece. Okay, so for the front piece I have two pieces of it. I'm going to turn the neckline just like I did for the back parts. Okay, now I'll place this right side facing the right side, and then I will stitch with half of an inch and turn the front neckline, just exactly what I did for the back piece. So after turning the neckline of the front piece, I also went ahead to run a loose stitch at the under bust line for my gathers. So before doing the gathers, I'll go ahead to overlap this with 2 inches. Okay, so after overlapping with 2 inches, I'm just going to pin this down like so, and then I'll go ahead to stitch on it. Then I'll also make my gathers. So this is how it's looking like after I've gone ahead to overlap this and also run my gathers as well, okay, at the under bust line. Now I'm going to be working on the basque waistline. So like I said before, I cut out the half-inch stitching allowance I added at the side. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and notch the middle point of this front piece. Now after notching the points like so, I'll open this up and then I'll bring the top part of this dress. I'm going to notch the middle point. Okay, and then go ahead to place this right side facing the right side, but I'll make sure both notches are facing each other, that is, they are aligning, and then I'll stitch this with half of an inch. So after I was done stitching, this is what I have. As you can see, I will turn this to the back side like so, and then I'm going to use my lining to close this stitching just like this. Okay, remember the notch of the lining should be facing the notch on the material itself. So I'm going to place it like so, and then I will stitch with half of an inch all around. So after I was done closing the stitching with my lining like this, I'm just going to stitch both sides like so, and then I'll be folding the sleeve with half of an inch and another half of an inch, meeting the 1 inch point that I notch on the sleeve. And then this is it for the front pattern. I also went ahead to stitch the side and the basque waistline. Now this is it for the back pattern. I've gone ahead to fold the sleeve of it as well. Now I'm going to be working on the back basque waistline. Okay, so I notch out the zipper allowance on my fabric. So now I'll open this up and then I'll bring one side of the back piece, that is the side that has the gather, and then I'm going to stitch this from the zipper allowance point that I notched out. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and stitch this with half of an inch. I'll repeat the same thing for the other side as well. Now after doing that, this is what I have. I'm going to use my lining piece to close this up like so. I'll stitch with ½ inch and then stitch the zipper area with half of an inch as well. Now after doing that, this is what I have. I'm going to turn this to the front part. Now after turning this to the front part, I went ahead to stitch this at the side and also the basque line. Okay, so this is it for both back piece. I'm just going to pin down the zipper allowance together. Now after doing that, I'm going to be working on the ruched sleeve. So I'm placing this right side facing the right side with the front and the back piece, and then I'll go ahead to stitch with that 1 inch allowance I left for the ruched effect. I also cut out 4 pieces of this material which I'm going to use as the strap for the ruched. Okay, so it is 1.5 inches wideness. Okay, you can make use of 1 inch wideness, then the whatever how long you want the strap to be determines on what you want. So after stitching with 1 inch, I'm just going to open this up. Okay, and I also went ahead to sew my strap down. So I'm going to be making use of two for one shoulder, two for the other shoulder. So now I'm going to place one of the strap on the back piece like so at the shoulder, and then place the other strap on the front piece like so underneath that 1 inch allowance for the ruched. And then I'm going to stitch this down, but first I'm going to fold that 1 inch allowance that we left by half of an inch, and then I'll make sure that the strap is inside of it when I am stitching. Okay, so when stitching, make sure that your stitching does not touch the strap inside of it. Okay, now after I was done doing that, this is what I have for both sleeves. Okay, and then I'll go ahead to join the two sides. So I'm using 1 inch because that is the allowance I left. I'm going to use 1 inch to close the two sides. After closing the two sides, this is what I have. The next thing I'm going to be working on is the gathers. Okay, now I've gone ahead to open this up. I'm going to notch the middle of the front piece. Okay, so I just went ahead to notch this. I'm going to measure it from the zipper allowance notch here. I'm just going to measure the waistline all the way to the other zipper allowance point like so. So I have 39.5. Okay, now that is how wide my gathers that I made use of 3 yards is going to be for the waist. So I'm just notching the zipper allowance on my gathers here like so, and I went ahead to notch the middle point of my gathers. Okay, now after doing that, I'll place this right side face on the right side like so. I will make sure that the two notches are facing each other. That is, the center of the front piece is facing the center of my gathers. Okay, now I'll go ahead to spread this out very well because I don't want the gathers to stay in one place. Okay, so I'm just going to pin the two zipper allowance of the gathers and then the top piece together like so, and then I'll stitch this with half-inch stitching allowance. Now after I was done stitching one side, I will go ahead to stitch the other side. So exactly the same thing I did for the other side is what I'm going to repeat here. Okay, now I'll go ahead and stitch it with half of an inch stitching allowance as well. Okay, so after I was done joining the top piece with the gathers, this is what I have. I'll go ahead to fix my zip. So from the joining between the top piece and the gathers, I came down by 5 inches, and that is where I will sew my zip up to on my gathers. Okay, now after fixing my zip, this is what I have. As you can see, this is all for this dress. I went ahead to hem the down with 1 inch, and this is all for this dress. So please, if you've not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, comment, share and like. I'll see you in my next tutorial, but for now, bye.